front of you. Mike, we're up to A4, I think? A3. We'll mark this as A3, and Jeff, if you wouldn't mind briefly walking the board members through.
Sure.
This rendering.
I testified last time that how we determine the sign height is by putting a pole at the back edge of the sign at the bottom of the sign. So if you can see the back bottom edge of the sign, then you know you have sufficient visibility from the roadway. So what this package shows, first of all, is the location where the sign is currently being proposed, not if there's a setback. And if you look at page number 2, you'll see a pole towards the side of the building there with a little orange flag on it. It's hard to see in these pictures, but that pole is set at a height of 32 feet, and it is where the back of the sign would be at the sign's currently proposed location based upon the site plan. That is the back of the sign.
Do you actually place that pole on the field?
Yes.
So this is not a computer generated?
No, that's a physical pole. That's an actual pole that we put out. It's a telescopic pole that we use, and you twist it and you can extend it up to 50 feet. That's an actual pole. That's not a simulation. And so yeah, that's it. So if you look at the next page, you can see the pole, and it goes just to the bottom of the back of the sign, and that is a simulation, the sign there. And that picture was taken at approximately 700 feet east of the site. So you're looking west, you're heading westbound on Route 10. There was concern about this on-premise sign of the shopping center that's to the east of the property, of the sign impacting it. It does not. As you do get closer, as you ride this, that sign is closer to the top of that on-premise sign, but it never blocks that sign in any way at the current proposed height. If you go to the next page, on page 4, you can barely see the top of the sign. There's a little mark there, again, at the back of the sign, but this is now looking eastbound at approximately 565 feet west of the proposed sign location. And then page 5 shows the rendering approximately of what that would look like and where it would be in relation at that height. Now, the next one is, the next set of renderings was done when we thought the sign was going to be moved back 6 feet. And again, you can barely see, it's tough because of the trees that are, bushes that are here, and the color matches the flag, unfortunately, number 7, but there is an actual flag there. And then you can see again the sign back 6 feet from what was originally proposed in the site plan. This is at 842 feet. Again, no impact obviously to that on-premise sign. And then the right side, at 6 feet, you cannot see the flag. If you're heading eastbound on Route 10 on page 9, you can't see the flag. And what it actually is, if you go to page 10, you can see that the building is taking out part of the apron, the 3-foot wide apron at that 6-foot back, which is why if we have to go back further, at some point that building is going to start taking out the back corner of the sign face.
So, but on page 10, that's moved back 6 feet.
Correct.
That the existing building is not shielding any part of your message board?
It's not shielding any part of the message board right there. It is, if you notice, it's starting to take out, as you go back, it takes out more of what I call the blue apron.
Yep.
And so that's at 6 feet. If that were to go back another 8 or 10 feet, it's going to start to take the sign out by a few feet, which is why if we have to move it back, we would like the additional 3 feet.
Well, let's stop right there. As I look on page 10, and if I were to take that message board and I slide it to the right.
Yeah, slide it back, away from Route 10. Yes.
Or at least on the page it would be to the right, right? I don't see how the existing building starts to interfere with the actual message board itself.
It does. We went out today because we learned about this late with the issue of where the power utility lines were gonna be, and you couldn't see the flag at a 35-foot height back, 14 feet back. So you know you're gonna lose part of that sign face. And we think it's 2 to 3 feet. Certainly if we have to, if they go back to the line and we have to move the sign back 16 feet, there's no question that it's gonna take part of it out. I wish it wasn't the case, but we did confirm that. We don't have photos, we did it late today, it was dark, but we wanted to be sure about it before I testified about it, but we did confirm that.
Would it take out the digital sign or just the apron?
No, they take out the apron and the back corner of the digital sign. A foot, 1 to 3 feet, depending. Again, we have a fluid situation with DOT on this, but 1 to 3 feet for sure, depending on how far back we have to go.
So if we raise the pole 3 feet, that message board could slide back 16 feet and be totally visible?
I believe so, yes.
And what's the purpose of the apron?
Apron holds there's a couple of purposes. One, you have to, as an NJDOT permit holder, you have to have an identification on your sign of who owns the sign, in this case Interstate, and it's not shown on here, but we also have to have our NJDOT permit number on there. And it has to be a certain size and length, and that's what the purpose of every sign you see out there has an apron like that. It's pretty much standard practice in
And that has to be visible?
Correct.
Okay, so
We would keep the nameplate pushed. If we had to move it back 6 feet, we would be okay. Yes, we're starting to lose the apron, but we make sure that our nameplate is, as you can see in number 10, our nameplate is still visible, and the DOT permit number would be all the way to the closest to the road, because that's the first thing DOT looks for, is make sure you have your permit number on the sign.
And the color of this pole will be what?
Will be black, as in number 10.
And the apron will be that gray?
It's a blue, sky blue.
Let me ask you a question. From your perspective only, what you want, what's best for you. I assume that's the proposal that's on the site plan today versus sliding the sign back 16 feet and raising it 3 feet. What's your preference?
It's always better. I mean, it's always better to have the sign closer to the road, just from height-wise and everything else. But if there's a concern with this board and they want the sign pushed back 12 feet, if you will, and we can raise it 3 feet, that works. That works for us.
So going from the 12 to the 16 is where you start to not view it as favorably.
Well, I mean, I guess from going back to 16 feet, if you will, it just seems to me that it's, the sign being closer to the road is better, but it's not, again, we were concerned also about the height, and trying to keep it under 50 feet. But if the board would prefer us to move it back and give us the additional height, we can do that too.
Personally, I'd like to see it like you've done here. These are great. I mean, they're very helpful, and a picture tells 1,000 words. And if we could see what the 16 feet back looks like and 3 feet up, you know, visually, I don't know what that 3 feet means from this distance. You know what I mean? But if we had those renderings available, that would be helpful. I don't know if this is, you know, going to another meeting or not, but
it would basically be the width of that apron is 3 feet. And I apologize for not having that to the board, but we really did. I learned it so late, right before the Thanksgiving holiday. This could not get this done beforehand, or I would have.
Now, on page 10, it looks like behind that vacuum truck, looks like it's a vacuum truck, there's that Liberty Monument sign, is that correct?
I believe so. I remember the day we were doing this, the DOT was doing some kind of major construction along 10 there. I believe so, but that's not impacting, being impacted in any way.
But, and again, I don't know if this is something we talk about with you or your planner, your traffic engineer, but it raises the issue of, well, there's several things at play here, we'll get to all that, but in terms of signage, we've got Liberty Monument sign, we've got your message board, and then we got the monument sign for the strip mall immediately to your east. We got 3 signs trying to grab your attention.
And the oversized Harley Davidson caddy quarters.
Correct.
So varying something.
I mean,
So,
it's,
so in other words, it's just, again, something to think about, be aware of. We've got 4 signs trying to get your attention at this location on Route 10 East, which, again, there's other factors here to consider, and we'll get to all that.
and I would just say that that's not an unusual situation. We can go back to the examples we gave to the board earlier, sign that we have, on Route 130, similar road in terms of traffic. You've got a number of signs. You've got a Wawa. You can't see there, but there's an identification sign closer, outside this picture. You've got a number of businesses there on one sign and a DOT directional sign. The sign that we just built, in Sayreville, a new one on 35, has signage. There's a gas station to the north of it. There is a large Lithia car dealer to the south of it with signage. It's not an unusual situation at all to have other signs along the roadway. It's a pretty commonplace thing.
Any other questions on this particular testimony?
No.
Liz? No. Mr. Moltz? Any questions on this exhibit? Any additional questions from board members? The information that was handed out after the break? Members of the public have questions on exhibit A3 handed out after the break?
I do.
So again, for the record.
Yep. Bill Houston, 80 Glenbrook Road. I'm actually going to refer to this document that you.
A1, yes.
Board A1,
Yes.
right? So I realized, and maybe I missed it in the earlier testimony, but it's a two-sided sign pole, right? So there's one
That's
facing
correct.
west.
It's a
one
two-sided sign, one pole, yes.
Right, sorry, yes.
Yes.
So yes, 2 signs, 1 pole. What I'm noticing here is that it's right on the property of what's Harley Davidson, right?
Correct.
So it impacts, I would assume, it's impacting their parking?
Not at all.
Not at all.
The pole is in an island area, and the sign will be high enough that there'll be no impact to either parking spots or security of traffic in that garage, or in that parking lot.
And that island currently exists?
Correct.
Okay. If it were to move back, right, as you were stating before, assuming that island would have to move back, it would then impact
The pole stays right where it
Pole
is, the
stays
sign
right.
slides back.
Got it. Okay, so the pole.
Pole stays where it is, no matter what happens, that's what the pole stays in.
Understood. Okay, so there's no additional, as you were saying earlier, there's no additional construction cost to the pole. The pole is where it is, it's just the sign sliding back and forth.
Right, now all that cost is our responsibility.
Got it. Understood. Okay. To Mr. Schultz's point before about why this location, when you go further east on Route 10, there's a Kohl's shopping center there. There's a number of other places there that, in my opinion, as a resident, would seem like that might be a better place for that. Was Kohl's or other locations on Route 10 looked at specifically in Morris Plains?
There were a number of locations looked at. We had originally looked at a gas station further west of here, and there were concerns about safety because of a ramp coming onto 46. And so we dropped that.
Point of clarity, you said 46.
I'm sorry, Route 10.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. And so, and not every, this is the complicating factor. Not every property owner wants a sign on their property for a variety of reasons. With future plans, visibility of their center to motorists on the highway. Some like it, some don't. It's a matter of preference. And again, if there's other DOT permits out there that we have to be spaced from, and zoning, impacts of residential, there's a whole variety of factors. It's not easy just to go find a location and have it a lease with the property owner and go forward and meet all the criteria I mentioned before.
Okay.
It's just a difficult process.
Understood. So to that end, then, so the owner of the Harley Davidson property is on board with this?
We have a lease with the, yeah, we would not be here unless we had a lease with
Okay.
the property owner.
Okay. And then Mr. Schultz, I believe, if I understood you correctly before, is there an application currently for Harley Davidson to add signage to the top of their building? Is that no? Okay.
No.
I misunderstood that. Okay. So there's nothing going on top of the Harley Davidson building. It's the way it is currently, that's how it's gonna stay.
Not as part of this application, and I'm not aware of any plans.
Understood. Okay.
I'm not aware of any plans either.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other members of the public wish to ask questions of this witness?
I got a follow-up question. You mentioned a gas station, further west on Route 10 eastbound,
Yes.
and you said that was abandoned because we're concerned about a ramp entering
Well,
Route 10?
there was a concern about traffic safety at that location. And you were at that meeting. We had a meeting a number of years ago, 2016, 2017. And based upon the concerns expressed at that meeting, based upon the conditions of Route 10 at that time, we did abandon that application. Because there was a safety concern that was expressed by you specifically. And so we said, okay.
Okay, I thought you were talking about a location outside of Morse Plains.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Seeing no other questions?
Thank you, Mr.
Please
Chairman.
step down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll now move on. Traffic engineer, Al Simoff, will get him sworn in and qualified, and then we'll go through the benefit of his previously filed traffic safety impact memo.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and business address, please.
My name is Hal Simoff, 2 Shunpike Road, Madison, New Jersey.
Can you spell your last name, please?
Sure. SIMOFF.
Al, would you briefly provide the board with the benefit of your background and credentials in the field of engineering, specifically traffic engineering?
Yes, I'm a licensed professional engineer, I'm a licensed professional planner, I'm a fellow with the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and I've been an adjunct professor of traffic engineering at NJIT in the past. I've been qualified throughout the county and the state as a traffic engineer.
And you've testified a number of times in connection with billboard development projects around New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Both your PE and PP are current in the city of New Jersey.
Yes.
Any questions from board members on qualification of this witness? All right, we'll accept him as an expert. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Hal, in connection with this project, you've become fully familiar with the applicant's proposed programming, the sign development details, and the civil engineering plans, is that right?
Yes.
And as you indicated, you've had the opportunity to work with such developers, including Interstate in the past, on billboards throughout New Jersey. Is that right?
Yes.
And in connection with your review, you prepared what I'll term as a traffic safety impact memo dated February 6th of this year, 2023, that was previously submitted to the board. If you would, Hal, would you please take us through the analysis and conclusions of that memorandum briefly?
First, I'll talk about the specifics, then I'll go to the global impacts. On the specifics, in my report, or in my February 6, 2023, I have.
And just to confirm for the board before you start, Hal, what we have blown up here on the easel is an identical sheet to what is in this memo packet, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
It shows, it's
Or
exhibit.
mark together the report or this diagram.
The report will be more comprehensive, I think, Mike.
Okay, so we're up to A4.
A4. For the Simoff memo dated 2/6/23.
Right. This is, on the board is exhibit E of that memo, the last sheet. And basically what it depicts is a viewing angle. I've located the board in the center of the sheet. And then I chose a viewing angle of 20 degrees, because that's what the manual of uniform traffic control devices talks about as a requirement for viewing angle for traffic lights and traffic control. So I took that same concept and I projected a 20-degree viewing angle in each direction. And I've chosen a distance of 800 feet, which is just to the west of Tabor Road. And on the other side of the road, it's just to the east of this, I believe it's an office building or the parking garage out in front of the, I think it's called the Gateway in Parsippany. So I've chosen, so at 50 miles per hour, the travel speed limit, you have about 11 seconds of viewing in this 800 feet in either direction. And as you can see, the Liberty gas station sign is just below this viewing angle. And then here's, within the viewing angle is the ground sign at the adjacent shopping center to the east of the subject site. So, and basically this shows a clear viewing of east and west of the proposed sign. The next step is to talk about the accident statistics in this area. What happened is, I originally was, as Jeff Gerber just talked about, I had statistics from DOT at this location between, which are also plotted in my memo, of the accident statistics for 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2017. In 2017 and 2018, from Tabor Road, going between Tabor Road and the sign, a distance of about 1,000 feet, there were 19 accidents in 2017, or now they call them crashes. It's terminology that's being changed from accidents to crashes. But in 2017, there were 19. In 2018, there were 17. And then in 2019, it went from 17 to 6. And then again in 2020, it's down to 6. I happened to check the database. I was waiting, and I had been told a number of times that the next year, 2021, would be updated. And I found that, I believe it's last week or the week before, it was updated, and I did that same analysis. And in this area between the sign and the on-ramp for Tabor Road, there were 9 crashes. So the average rate is 0.67 for those 3 years. The 3 years when it went down, with 0.67 crashes per million entering vehicles. At this location, the eastbound direction is about 10.2 million vehicles per year. And so crashes are measured as entering vehicles per million, crashes per million entering vehicles. So as I stated, for the last 3 years when the accident rate was lower, it was 0.67. In the first 2 years of the study, it was 1.86. So it was more than 2 times. And I tried to figure out, or I tried to get this impact or the material from the DOT. And the people they referred me to just couldn't tell me when these improvements were done. But I believe what happened is there were 3 lanes going eastbound, and it was changed to 2 lanes, and there was an added on-ramp, which effectively reduced the crash rate by 1/3 in this area. So originally, when Mr. Gerber was talking about putting the sign at the gas station site, it was a higher accident rate. It was in the range of 1.6 crashes per million entering vehicles. But now, after the improvements, it's down to 0.67 crashes per million entering vehicles. So on a specific location, the crash rate in the westbound direction, because of the changes to the striping and the improvements to Route 10, the crash rate has gone approximately a third of what it was.
A good point of clarity, you said in the westbound direction, I believe you mean the
Eastbound.
eastbound direction?
I stand corrected, eastbound.
Okay.
Because that was the concern the last go-around, when Mr. Gerber was talking about putting a sign at the gas station site. And it was withdrawn because of the crash rate being too high. So, now let me discuss a little bit on the global. The United States Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, has prepared a study which evaluated the impacts of digital to static and they also compared it to areas that had no billboards. And what happened is there was a study in 2012 that released the data, that compiled the data, but it was not released for about 2 or 3 years after that because it was peer reviewed, and it's reviewed and studied 56 different additional reference material. There are groups that submitted material that said that there are groups that say that billboards create accidents. There are groups that say billboards don't create accidents, and there are groups that say billboards have no impact on accidents. So, and what this federal study did, which I attached the executive summary of the report to this memo. Basically, it said that the average, they have, with the technical ability, they set the car up so when people were driving in Virginia and in Pennsylvania, they could see their eye glances, and they could measure the glances off the road. There had been some previous studies that said if you take your eyes off the road, like, it was originally done for texting, to evaluate the impact of texting while driving, and they found that if you take your eyes off the road for more than 2 seconds, it's a traffic hazard. They found in this study that the average glances were 0.3 seconds of billboards, and because they had the car attached to a GPS, and they had the eye glances, and they could measure the eye glances in the relationship to the car, to the to the location. And they found that people were looking at these billboards for, on average, 0.3 per second, 1/3 of a second. And they found that, and this federal study, which was unbiased, found that billboards, both static and digital, did not create a hazard. And it was used as a guide for placing billboards, because the federal government is responsible for the placement and the regulation of billboards under the Highway Beautification Act. And so there's ongoing studies, and digital billboards started becoming prevalent, about 10 years ago. And the federal government wanted to know if there was any correlation between accidents, crashes, and location, and they found none. So from a global point of view, the regulations and the statistics indicate that billboards do not create a traffic hazard. And from a specific point of view, this is a low accident, a low crash rate location, and so it will be maintained. That's my testimony.
Thank you, Hal.
So why don't I open up questions for this witness from Mr. Maltz? And by way of introduction, if you haven't met Mr. Maltz, he's the borough's traffic expert. So you can also hear him in every meeting, but glad when he's here. Harold, take it away.
Yes, I reviewed extensively the materials submitted by Mr. Simoff. I reviewed the federal highway documents that he sent, the executive summary. And I agree with what his findings were in that area. That covers really points 1 and 2 in my report. The viewing angle I had some comments on, However, I think it was Mr. Gerber, if I got the name right?
Yes.
Yes, previously, he actually satisfactorily addressed the issue of the viewing angle. Tonight you got renderings which clearly show that you can see the proposed sign. And I believe also that all the rest of my comments were taken care of by Mr. Gerber, even though it's in the traffic review section. It just happens to be the way the witnesses saw it. So I have nothing additional to add. I understand the conditions of the permit, or what's going to, essentially they're reserving the right for this site to put this sign up by renewing their permit each year, and it'll be modified down the road for the appropriate size sign if they come to that, point. But I have no other comments regarding this matter on traffic. I think everything I asked has been addressed.
Thank you, Al. Leon, Liz, any questions on this testimony?
Mr. Simoff, have you been out to this site during the weekday morning peak hour?
Yes.
Have you made a maneuver from Route 53 north onto Route 10 east during peak AM rush hour?
Route 53.
North onto Route 10 east?
Tabor Road. Yeah. Yes.
In your opinion, when someone is trying to merge, because there's an acceleration lane there to get into the through lane of Route 10 East, correct? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're trying to accelerate and merge into the traffic,
You don't.
given the fact there's a driveway from the Morris Plains Automotive and Convenience Store, there's also the public road, Candlewood Drive, coming under Route 10 East. And now with this billboard in place, do you feel that negatively impacts traffic safety in terms of this additional billboard being at that location under those conditions?
No.
No.
This federal study went extensively into what happens in high traffic locations and the ability to be distracted by signage and billboards and texting and all these other issues that confront drivers. And they found that about 85% of the time the driver is looking out the front windshield. And that's what basically is what I show in this graphic in Exhibit E. When you get beyond a certain angle, you're not looking at the billboard because it's beyond your cone of vision. And the statistics all indicate that whatever accident rate or crash rate you have now is the crash rate you're gonna have in the future.
And that's irregardless of the fact that you have an acceleration lane here with two, well, one's a public street, one's a driveway, right in the middle of that acceleration lane. That would impact that finding?
No, because what I did is I found that in the last 3 years, the rate went down. It was cut in 1/3 because of the changes in the striping for Route 10 and the Tabor Road on-ramp. And whatever you have now is gonna be what you're gonna have in the future.
Did you confirm what year the striping was changed on the Route 10 eastbound area?
No, I tried, and I couldn't, I went to the local office in Mount Arlington, and they gave me the name of an engineer, and I must have called the guy a half a dozen times. All I got was a voicemail. Either he was on vacation, or or he didn't exist. But it's clear that in 2017 and 2018, there were 19 crashes in this, well, it's in my review, but in this area here in front of the gas station, from the on-ramp from Tabor Road to just beyond the sign, to the driveway to the shopping center, in that distance, in 2017 and 2018, just in the eastbound direction, there were 19 and 17 accidents respectively. And then in 2019, it went to 6. And then in 2020, it went to 6. And then in 2021, it's at 9. So the numbers, something happened out there between 2018 and 2019 that changed the, and I would assume that's because when you have the rate dropping so substantially and significantly, something was the cause of that.
Overall traffic volumes during that time period relatively the same?
2020 were a little bit lower. They were about 15% lower based on the statistics that I checked from New Jersey DOT. But when they calculate, they used the same number in 2017, 18, and in 20. In 21, they went up a little bit. They went up about 3-4%.
But your unit of crash is measured in millions of cars entering, so it would factor in.
It would correlate.
Right.
Right.
Correct?
It was, yeah, it was like, I used the number of, based on there's a published AADT of about 29,000 vehicles per day in the eastbound direction. And that relates to 10.2 million vehicles per year. Because you take the 28, you multiply it by 365. It's a little bit more than 28,000. It's 58,000 two direction.
Leon, any other questions?
Not right now, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Harold, any questions raised by Leon's questions?
Leon and I had discussed previously, before I prepared my report, the issue of, how many potential eye-catching items might be out there between Tabor Road and coming on. Every time I come to Morris Plains Municipal Building or any of the sites, I use that connection from Tabor Road, so I am familiar with it. I've been out there when I leave here, peak hours, midday, so I'm familiar with it. I don't particularly have a problem with the introduction of the signage. My feeling is that the driver getting on from Tabor Road, at that point, he's going to be paying more attention to looking to accelerate and merge into the traffic than he is trying to focus on a digital sign or even a static sign down the road. So that's my position. The sign like the Liberty gas station, that's a single, it's a big sign that's up there, but it says Liberty. It's one sign that for that property that's right there. What you have here is a digital message sign that's going to have varying messages, for different locations, and the sign that's right after it on the drive, that's the joint drive serving the joint property. I mean, that message board is 20 feet high, as testified by Mr. Berger last time, and you have small sign panels underneath which you can only see when you start getting on poles. So I don't feel that there's such a large issue of getting on Tabor Road. You are going to be looking as if I do. I don't look down the road to see a sign when I get on. I can honestly tell you that, and that's every time I've been here. That's how I go home. In all different times of the day, I'm looking at my mirror or over my shoulder at the vehicle coming eastbound behind me. I'm not paying attention to the signage up ahead.
Liz, any questions for us?
Yes. Are there any state or federal regulations regarding how many digital signs can appear on a roadway? If the board were concerned, let's say, that if a billboard was permitted here, that it could be permitted, at every property along the stretch.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff. You're still under oath. You're
Just
still
wanted to answer it.
It's a NJDOT requirement for digital signs is 3,000 feet on the same side of the road. So by DOT regulation, you can't have another digital sign for 3,000 feet to the east or the west on the eastbound side of Route 10.
Okay, thank you. And then the other
I was
question.
gonna say the same thing.
Then the other question I had was, you were talking about that you, essentially a driver has 11 seconds, or really to look, to view the billboard, is that correct?
Well, that's what I plotted there. The 800 feet gives you 11 seconds.
So, can you just remind me, I think Mr. Gerber testified to this last time, but how long each message stays on the billboard?
8 seconds.
So, okay, so you potentially, I guess, would
You can see 1 or 2 changes.
maybe 3 if you got the last second of one.
Right.
Okay, all right. I think that's it. So, but typically,
Well, right, and the advantage to this is that, you know, the road is relatively straight. In the eastbound direction, it's coming down grade, but it's still straight, and there's limited restrictions to visibility. There's the overpass for the taper, or for Route 53, but that's beyond the scope of this plotting.
okay. And, well, let me just ask, just out of curiosity, is there any, what's the magic with 8 seconds? Meaning, like, if you're gonna see something for only 11 seconds, why would you not change it more regularly? Or,
Well, there are 2 factors. One, before he gets up, there's one from a business point of view, and then there's one where the Federal Highway Administration did studies, and they recommended 8 seconds. So that's where New Jersey picked up the standard for 8 seconds. But if he wants to add in.
I would say it is the standard under New Jersey Department of Transportation regulations, and virtually all of the other outdoor companies operate their signs at 8 seconds. So the difference is it becomes a competitive disadvantage if you're at 11 seconds versus 8 seconds in terms of the number of spots. Plus advertisers get used to buying 8-second spots, not 11-second spots.
well, the converse, what about doing 4-second spots? But I guess they're saying
Well,
that the minimum has to be 8.
DOT determined and the Federal Highway Administration determined that 8 seconds is the
The minimum.
safest minimum, optimum.
Okay, all right, those are the only questions I have right now.
Any questions from board members for this witness?
Yeah, I have one. So along those lines, if the study showed that your eye only drifted to the billboard for 1/3 of a second, why do we have any billboards?
It only takes 0.3 seconds, well, I'm not an expert, but it
Hold
only
on,
takes.
traffic is good because we're only drifting for 1/3 of a second.
No, that's the glance. You might glance 2 or 3 times at the same billboard.
So isn't that additive in the
No.
traffic thing?
No, because you're taking in the environment. You're looking at the car in front of you, you're looking at the car beside you, you're 85, 90%, the study went on to say, 85 to 90% of the time, you're looking at the road. So the other 5 or 10%, you're glancing around. And so, and again, this federal study reviewed locations with no billboards, with just static billboards, and static and electronic billboards. And they found that between static and electronic, there was a slight difference, 1/10 of a second or something like that. But they found that 1/3 of a second was the average glance. And then they said that they found that you would be glancing at the billboard more than once. So you're not focused and you're not distracted by the billboard.
So from a traffic safety perspective, the fact that I glance quickly when I'm back to the road, for instance, but then I can glance again at the billboard, again, coming back focused, so that from a traffic safety, you're okay.
Yes.
From a business perspective, you hit it a couple of times and maybe get the gist of what's on the billboard.
Right. There's a billboard on Route 78 in the eastbound direction. It faces the eastbound direction, and it's just outside of Newark Airport, and it praises Ramadan, and there's so much writing on it that you can't even look at it. There's like hundreds of lines of copy. And the effective billboards are the ones that, you know, present themselves in the 1/3 second.
Okay, thank you.
Have there been any studies to evaluate traffic accidents before the implementation of these digital signs and after?
I did one on Route 22 in Union for a competitor and found that there was, what happened is there was another billboard about 3,000 feet away. And I did a before and after of that billboard, and I found no difference
In accidents.
in accident rate.
And you mentioned before.
It was on Route 22 in Union.
And you mentioned earlier that you attributed the improvement in crash rates in the Tabor Road area to a change in the striping around that area.
That's, I can't tell you when it happened, but it used to be 3 lanes, and then they cut it down to 2, west of Tabor Road.
And there was no way to verify when that exactly happened as far as the time frame goes?
There was no, but clearly the numbers tell you when it happened. When it goes from 19 and 17 down to 6, something happened.
On a gross basis, but so when COVID hit in 19, right?
20.
20. Yeah.
So in 1919 it was 6, so a year before COVID.
Okay.
And in 21, 21's the last year that they have compiled, and that was 9.
No, actually. Okay.
So it stayed low
Got it.
it was low for 3 years, and it was high for the 2 years prior to that.
Do you have any additional data going back further than 2 years before?
Well, I don't have, I didn't study it, because the standard is you take a 3-year average. So I had the 2 years, you know, 17 and 18, because this billboard was proposed in 16 or 17, maybe it was 18. And so I had those numbers available. And so, and again, they proved that it was a relatively high crash rate. It was 19 and 17 crashes in front of the gas station, in front of the motorcycle. And then it went down to 6 the next year in 2019, before COVID.
I do have a question. There are still accidents. I'm one of the fire chiefs in town, and most of our accidents happen in just after Harley Davidson down to Jiffy Lube. So with that 8-second flash, do you see if somebody's, because people are slowing down, because they are coming from those lanes and going to 2. So there's quite a few rear enders. We've had some rollovers, and just recently we had a car into the Harley Davidson building, hit the front corner. So do you think that 8 seconds, when these cars are supposed to be slowing down, just that glance could also start contributing to the accidents that are just past Harley Davidson going down the hill? It's definitely distracted driving, and people are rear-ending each other from Harley Davidson.
Well, then they're past the sign.
They're past it, but they're looking at it as they're going by. And most of our
Well,
accidents,
that's
historically, most of our accidents are happening from Harley Davidson to Jiffy Lube.
well, I did it beyond Candlewood. I did it from the driveway to the shopping center.
Next door, yeah.
It's just, you know, I'm not sure the distance, but it looks to be maybe 50 feet past the board. And I started here where the merge started. And those are the ones that are plotted in my memo.
Yeah, we're not seeing them so much right there. We're seeing them just in front of.
Well, this is still this is 2 lanes.
Correct, yeah.
It
So what's
goes
happening
down,
is-
it starts 2 lanes before Tabor Road, and then it's carried through with 2 lanes, and then there's the merge that you can see with the stripe. So it's 2 lanes constantly.
I was
And
asking,
then-
do you think there's any contributing factors from the area that doesn't have accidents anymore that's still contributing to accidents just past the Harley Davidson building? Because we are getting accidents there. is there contributing factors that you think from in that area that are cause these people to be distracted, to be rear-ending each other another few hundred feet down the road?
Candidly, I didn't look east of the shopping center driveway.
Yeah, because 8 seconds is a long time when you're doing 50 miles an hour, so, you know, it's a big, you can travel pretty great distance in 8 seconds. So if you
You're
glance up,
traveling at 73 feet per second. So, at 50 miles per hour. But the point is that if you can see where I used a 20-degree angle of viewing the sign. Once you get beyond this point, which pretty much lines up with Candlewood Drive, the sign, you're looking out the side window to see the sign. You're not looking, between Candlewood and Tabor, you're looking out the front window, to make it a simple comparison. You're not gonna turn your head and look to the right and look up.
yeah, my question was, do you think there's some contributing factors for the
I-
accidents we're getting just past Harley Davidson from the 3 to the 2?
No,
Okay.
unless it's the driveways.
Yeah. Distraction.
That's not a distraction.
Well, cell phones, everything. If there's distraction, there's
Oh,
absolutely
yeah.
distraction.
Well, that's why that initial study talked about the 2-second distraction. And this recent federal study said that if it was more than 2 seconds, it would give them cause to regulate the signs in a more strict fashion.
I have a question. Why did you start or stop the analysis at 800 feet? What made you reach that point?
Because there's other signs, it's the geometry of the road, it's the size of the letters. You know, you're not gonna see this sign much more than 800 feet.
You're not gonna see the details of the sign, or you're
The
not gonna
copy,
see- Okay, all right, the copy on the sign. Okay.
it was just my professional interpretation of where to start. I mean, it could be further along, but I don't think that you would be looking at the sign more than 800 feet away.
Art, you have another question?
Yeah, the other thing is, we're allowed one dumb question a night, so this is my one. What filters do you have to prevent provocative advertisements to capture someone's attention for more than 0.3 seconds?
Well, the client has proposed some controls.
No, I know some doesn't cover it, but I mean, you get a young guy and you have a busty chick up there advertising a casino or something.
We heard testimony regarding G-rated, and if approved, that would be a condition of the approval. Right, so I mean, we have to bank on that testimony, that that's accurate.
Could be a busty guy.
That might be G-rated copy, what you just described.
G or PG? I thought I heard G.
Yeah.
Just kind of putting a different scenario on that though, if you're, let's say 7 o'clock in the morning, you're coming from Denville, coming down Route 10, and Dunkin' Donuts has their advertisement up there, and because down the road in the plaza is Dunkin' Donuts, someone wanting a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden they see that cup, that's advertising, that's the goal of advertising. But now they're not looking at that merge lane right there, because they're looking at the cup of coffee that's up on the billboard, and all of a sudden they don't see the little old lady who forgot to put their turn signal on come right into your lane because they're looking at the billboard. Like, what's your confidence level that distraction, for someone who might be tired, who might be looking into the sun, and it sees the billboard and that's the one last thing that they see.
Well, everybody seems to think that billboards, that you stare at them for, the total time you're driving. And the reality is this federal study showed that it's 0.3 seconds. So maybe you and I, because we're working on a billboard application, would stare at a billboard for more than 0.3 seconds. But they did two locations. They did, I believe it's, at each location it was about 50 drive-bys, 50 instances, and the average was 0.3 seconds.
But because I'm saying, in your opinion, right, because we put yourself at 7 o'clock in the morning, going down Route 10, and you come around the corner, and you see the billboard right there, would that give you, wouldn't you engage more with that billboard, possibly, because it's right in your face there as you're coming down Route 10, and not look at that merge lane?
I don't think it's any different than the Liberty gas station sign.
Really?
You know,
Like a digital sign that says like Dunkin' Donuts and has a nice cup of coffee on it?
So I think at some point it's asked and answered.
Yeah. Okay.
I assume you're gonna say that soon.
It's getting close.
You just wanted me to.
It's 10 o'clock, I'm thinking about coffee, sorry.
All right. Any other questions from board members before I open it up to the public? Any questions for this witness from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, the witness may step down.
Thank you. Our planning witness is our final witness, Mr. Chairman. We're gonna go to Mr. McDonough now. I think his direct testimony is less than 10 minutes, give or take. We realize the hour of the night, the applicant's hopeful to get to a conclusion this evening. So this is our final witness on the application, Mr. Chairman.
Would you raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and business address.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John McDonough. My business address, 101 Gibraltar Drive, wherever that is from here, Morris Plains, New Jersey.
John, I know you testified in Morris Plains a number of times over the years, but briefly for the record, your background credentials and professional licensing.
Sure. I have a license in professional planning. That license is current and in good standing on the state level and on the national level as well. I have the good fortune of getting to testify throughout the state every single night throughout New Jersey, and I've been here multiple times in the past. Those licenses are current and good standing.
Any questions on falls from members of the board? Accept those witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, you're familiar with the site, the area, and the development plans on this project, is that right?
I think this is a site I can say I'm thoroughly familiar because my office is west and I'm a fan of Uncle Giuseppe, so I'm driving down that road every day. And the nature of our practice as planners is we always seem to be heading east from here to the urban areas, and so I'm passing the site every day.
And fair to say you have significant experience in development applications involving all kinds of advertising billboards?
Many, yes. It's the nature of the practice is it's a popular land use. We see it a lot.
With that, John, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, we're going to let the site sort of speak for itself here. I know you've seen some visuals. I'm going to give you a little more from my perspective, from a planning standpoint. And these are personally taken by me or under my supervision. There's a dozen in this packet, but we're going to pop through them, and I really won't be long-winded here.
So this will be A5, and it's what, a series of photographs?
11 by 17, it's going to be a couple of ground photos, and I'm going to lift you in the air to the height of the
Are they all
billboard.
site photo, of the site, the
Yes.
site property? Okay.
I think
I'm
there's
just gonna
11
start
pages
here.
on the deck, Mike.
Put one on the public table there, please.
You can give it to I thought,
We got an extra here.
is that an extra? You took
I got it.
So,
A5.
A5 for the record are a series of ground and aerial drone photographs that were taken on or about October 23rd, 2023. So they're about a month old. Clear and accurate representation of the site as it exists, as I'm familiar with it. A couple of key points here before I launch into the photos themselves.
We're here at the extreme northern end of town. Right? Route 10 is what defines the northern boundary of the town. It's the highest order roadway in the community. It carries the most traffic. The nature of this land use is that it follows our transportation patterns. So logically, this land use is going to migrate to where the roadways are. Again, this is the highest order roadway in the community. It only runs through Morris Plains for about a mile. Bear in mind, we've got 3,000 foot separation for digital signs. So essentially, if we put this sign here, we've got limited ability to see more signs along the corridor, either to the east or to the west, if at all. So I think that's important as well. You do have another high order roadway in Route 202, but that is certainly closer to the downtown here, closer to residential uses, and we think our applicant has done a real good job of hitting the bullseye, if you will, in terms of staying remote from residential, and we'll get into some of the numbers in a little bit, and also keeping a concentration in what is really a commercial district defined by a pocket of commercial uses along Route 10 on one of the larger sites that you have on Route 10. So another distinguishing factor here is that you do have good spatial capacity to accommodate the land use that's before you. So just taking you through the photographs, frame number 1 on A5 is me standing on the subject property, looking at the location of where the billboard would go at the front of the site. You heard Mr. Gerber's testimony that if those wires moved, the sign would move as well, asking for that additional increase in height just to maintain clear and safe visibility. You can see we're at a relatively straight stretch of road. I'm not the traffic expert, but my experience is that things are tricky, I'll say, when you come around the curve at the top of the hill. Vehicles are dealing with high speed on the curve, and here we've encountered a reasonably straight stretch of roadway where visibility becomes better from a driving standpoint. We've sort of now established the 2 lanes of traffic, whereas as you work your way up the hill, you've got the 3 lanes, and there's a lot of merger going on the Parsippany side. And then we know what happens once you work your way past Littleton Road as we start to approach Route 287. That turns into an absolute racetrack down there as people are jockeying for position, and you've got multiple lanes of traffic. So again, I get my gas from that Liberty Gas on the way out. I know cars are coming on and I'm moving off the highway there, but my experience from a daily basis is that it manages itself there. And again, I'm not the traffic expert, but as someone who drives the road, I see no interference with the ability to move in and out of those sites along 10 there with this sign. This is a view again looking westbound, so you looking to the west, so this is looking at eastbound traffic, or where you would see mostly the morning traffic coming down on Route 10. My experience is the traffic is generally moving slower at this point as well. This is rush hour, and while you do get your volumes then, the traffic is generally moving slower as well. We're now panning you across, looking to the north, and you get a sense of the nice foliage there, that even when the leaves drop, you've got a dense massing that would separate the site from any uses beyond that tree line. Obviously, the dominant land use is the highway itself and the gas station on the opposite side. This is where the nose of the sign or the point of the sign would be, so we're not looking at full exposure of the sign faces from this vantage point anyhow. Next frame, I sort of panned to the northeast. You get a sense of the sign that's over on the retail center, the newer center that's come online about 10 years or so. And by the way, this board, your planning board, the community at large has done a great job at planning along the corridor here and transforming something that was radically different 10, 15 years ago with those dying industrial uses. So I see this as continuing the positive transformation of the area and blending with what's happened, not contradicting what's been happening there. Again, on the opposite side, you've got the Tomac Motel, and you're looking more at the administrative aspect of the building than the residential aspect of the building, so we see no conflict there as well. And then finally, frame number 4, we've panned back to give a sense of what we would see as we angle back towards the retail portion of the site, or the adjacent site. Frame number 5, now gonna take you through a series of 4 photographs that are essentially the same as the ground shots I showed you, just lifting a drone up to that 49-foot height. So this is essentially the reverse view of what the sign would see. You get a sense of what would be seeing the sign from this vantage point. The clear point here is that you're not seeing any residential uses within eye shot or within reasonable visible distance of where the board is. In frame number 5, the view to the looking westbound, you can see in the background there, nestled into the landscape, is what I call the De Pasquale billboard. It's on the westbound side of Route 10, and it always seems to be advertising for the De Pasquale salon a little bit further to the west. So that's a static board. To answer one of the board members' question about the nearest digital board, if we work our way to Denville, over by where the ski barn is, at that intersection there, at that jug handle, that is a digital sign, and there is a traffic signal right there. So that sign is coexisting with a traffic signal, it's an electronic sign, and is at a jug handle as well. And that's on the westbound side of Route 10. So again, the main view here, frame number 5, we're looking to the west. You see non-residential uses, the gas station, an office complex, the social security building, and then as we work our way to the north, you can see the gas station on the opposite side, again, looking predominantly at the canopy of the gas station, so that covers any visibility of the sign as well. Looking in frame number 7, we're looking to the northeast. Again, you see the motel on the other side. You see the office complex over at Gate Hall a little bit further to the east. And then that retail use and more highway commercial uses along Route 10 as we work our way to the east. The important thing to point out here, if you were to look at your master plan, your 2018 master plan reexamination report, towards the very back, you have a series of maps. I think it's on page 55 or so, that shows this site is a distinct area, a distinct pocket in the community where you have commercial uses. There are about 14 or so lots here along Route 10 that are designated as commercial. This is one of the larger lots. It's in the OB zone as opposed to the other lots, which are in the C1 zone, which is a smaller zone. We know that to be in the OB zone, you need to have larger lot size, so there is excellent capacity here spatially to accommodate this dual use of an outdoor advertising sign and then, of course, the motorcycle dealership as well. We think it's important that this is in a non-residential area and a distinct pocket that is remote from residential. If we look at Harrison, the land uses to the east, the residential grade on Harrison drops down by about 30 feet from the subject site, so there's some vertical separation. And then we've also got good horizontal separation as well, where those homes are about 620 feet away at the nearest point. And then, of course, on top of the grade separation and the horizontal separation, you have saturation in between in the form of vegetation and the built environment as well, that if not completely obscures the view, it certainly filters any sort of view of the sign, which again is so remote that there will not be any substantially negative impact of this sign at this location, even if one could get a glimpse of it, which I don't think they will. If the sign were moved further to the east, down the hill, it would be closer to those residences, so I think we've maintained good separation here. And if it were moved further to the west, you heard from Mr. Simoff's testimony that there would be some safety concerns. It would also move closer to residential uses over on the Parsippany side, where you've got the Mountain View condominium. So again, we think the applicant has done a good job here of picking a bullseye that is along a major highway, that is in a commercial area, and that is, I'll say, equidistant from residential uses. Frame number 8 is just a view of that retail center from the air, and the key point here is you don't see any of those homes on Harrison from this vantage point, which are further beyond the retail center. Some of those commercial uses, including the Ayers jewelry store that Larry and I did a few years ago, and then those residential uses drop down beyond that. And then the last 3 frames, I went down Harrison, looked back to the west, again based on grade. Some of those homes are ranches, some are not. Even from the upper windows, you can see there's full obscurity of any visibility of both the highway and any signage that's associated or land uses that are associated with that highway. So again, we think from a residential standpoint, the impact here would be minimal, if any. In terms of the actual relief that's before the board, I think the applicant has given the board a good predicate in terms of the negative criteria. The primary concerns with this land use are often the illumination or the brightness levels. You had Mr. DeWork's testimony address that. Then, of course, traffic safety. You had Mr. Simoff's testimony address that as well. And then operations and content control. You had Mr. Gerber give good, solid testimony in that regard as well. So I think the board has good protections in terms of the negative criteria here to find that relief can be granted without any substantially adverse impacts on the public and on the intent and purpose of the zone plan and ordinance here. Importantly, relief relates to a distinct piece of property and certainly does not apply to the entire zone district. In terms of the positive criteria, I think the board can move favorably on the special reasons aspect of the test. This use is a message board. It promotes the general welfare as a form of communication. Our courts have made clear that this use is a form of constitutional free speech. I think your professional referred to it as a message board. I like that as well. It's a way we all speak to each other, whether in the written word or the verbal word. Here, this is certainly in written speech. The use then promotes businesses, and these are the companies that we all either work for, work with, or invest our nest egg in. So we want to see these businesses succeed. The use promotes institutional uses, which may be considered inherently beneficial. I'm not saying the use itself is inherently beneficial. I saw the look come at me, but I will say we see religious uses, we see hospitals, and we see schools all advertise and use this as a form of getting the word out. So we know those are important land uses as well, and this becomes an arm or an instrument of communication for those uses. So I think that's a good thing from a planning standpoint. Again, I'm not saying the use is inherently beneficial, but it is hooked to those uses. You've heard through Mr. Gerber's testimony that the use can also benefit on a local level, public service announcements. We see this a lot in Denville, where they're promoting the downtown during the Christmas holiday. That's something that this town may take advantage of as well. Digital technology provides the added benefit of real-time alerts for police, emergency services, and the like. Again, that is the benefit of digital or electronic displays, that it can have preemptive real-time messages. All of the above will promote purposes of zoning, especially Purpose A, that's the promotion of the general welfare. Purpose G, to provide for a variety of uses and appropriate locations. For all the reasons I've given, I think this location is appropriate here and answers the why here question that the board was asking Mr. Gerber. Purpose H, which is the planning goal for the free flow of traffic. Purpose I is to promote a positive aesthetic. And then Purpose M, which is the planning goal for efficient use of land. This is a retrofit of an existing site and doesn't require any tree clearing or wholesale reconstruction to accommodate this use at this location. In terms of site suitability, I think all of the metrics are there. Contextually, it's a highway use in a commercial area. Also, by virtue of its condition, as we've said and as we've seen, it's an easy retrofit of an established site. And perhaps most importantly, the DOT itself, as the stewards of highway safety, have said this location is okay. In fact, they've actually said it's a permitted location as defined by the regulations. And as I said, it's on a clear, straight stretch of road. This is not on the bend coming down the hill, and this is not further east where we start to open up to, I'll call it the racetrack as we approach 287. Clear lines of sight for ease of site readability all go towards the positive criteria. We talked about the negative impact. This is a functionally innocuous land use that just doesn't generate any traffic, any noise, any waste. It needs no water or sewer. And for all of the reasons we've given from a visual standpoint, this use is going to be directed at the highway, not at any residential uses. The sign is an area where it's positioned to have absolutely no interference with the existing use. And then finally, relief can be granted without causing substantial impairment to the zone plan. The project will promote the 2018 master plan goal for economic development and a stable rateable base. The use is commerce-oriented in a commerce-oriented highway commercial zone. It's less intense and less impactful than the uses that are permitted in the zone. In terms of the height relief, I think the visuals give the board the evidence there needs to move favorably. In terms of the positive criteria, all of the use benefits carry forth to the height relief in that the height is necessary to effectuate the use. If you can't see the use, it doesn't work. So that height will provide the additional clearance over trucks, over other obstacles on the highway to promote that clear visibility of that sign. Whenever we look at height relief, we look at the purposes of height controls. In the Brasso case, the added height does not create additional population density or traffic generation. It does not create any negative shadow effects or block any scenic views. And the added height relates to a structure that has less mass and less bulk than if it were a building per se. So the impact there is less than if the height relief were associated with a building. Finally, there is C relief related to the setbacks. I have the 6 feet versus the 75 feet as necessary for clear and safe readability of the sign to perform its function. Again, that may come back if the applicant needs to maintain an offset from the power lines. And then also the side setback of 54.7, where 75 feet is the minimum that's required, relates to the lot line that's common to the retail center as well, not going to violate any light, air, or open space or interfere with the use or activity of either site, the subject or the adjacent. And so there's a certain aspect of hardship to the extent we're working with an existing site, but we think that's really justified under the C2 balancing, where the benefits of the application as a whole would substantially outweigh the detriments. With that said, I believe the statutory criteria for all of the relief are met and approval is warranted.
Thank you, John.
Can I ask a question? Mr. McDonough, you said, just go over again the citation to the 2018 master plan reexamination. You were talking pretty good clip.
Yep, sorry about that. Yep. There are some broad-based goals of
Where is that?
maintaining
Do
a
you know
balance.
exactly where that is in that reexam?
Let's see if I can pull up the exact page. And just to go to my first part of the testimony, the map that I was referring to is on page 50, that's your existing land use map on page 55 of 57. And then with respect to the goals, you carry forth your 2008 reexamination goals to 2018. Goal number 13, conducting land use decision-making and implementing policies which lend themselves to an economical, efficient, and that relates to educational system. Let me just come back. It references the state plan and says 4 goals, including targeted economic growth, enhance opportunities for attraction and growth of industries of statewide and regional importance.
What page is that?
That is on page 40.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Mike? All right. Liz, questions for this witness in this testimony?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. McDonough, so I'm sure you know, you're well aware, in the Morris Plains ordinance doesn't permit moving signs or billboard signs.
Correct.
Right, and so the last master plan re-exam was done in 2018. Can you provide some testimony, sort of in relation to Medici, why perhaps have circumstances changed since 2018? Are there, you know, why was no recommendation made in the 2018 master plan re-exam having to do at all with billboards or this type of signage?
Probably to give a heightened level of scrutiny, which is something this board would have greater control over. That's why we have a zoning board of adjustment, is so that the board can consider things that may not have been considered at a more broader, higher level on the governing body level. Again, we're honing in on 14 sites that are currently commercial along the corridor. It's a very narrow band, and rather than make it district-wide, perhaps the governing body intent in terms of the reconciliation was to completely leave it out so that it could be considered on a more site-specific basis.
Okay. Another question I have, and this is regarding the negative criteria and site suitability, and I understand everything that has been said about site suitability in terms of commercial zones and highway, you know, a well-traveled corridor and impacts, you know, trying to be as remote as possible from residential. This site, you know, you mentioned though the OB zone, it has larger lots. So this site received a variance for lot size because it's undersized for the zone. And this site also received a number of variances for signage. And when you look at sort of an aerial, this building, the Harley-Davidson building, is actually closer to Route 10 than a lot of the other buildings on the corridor. And so I guess I would like to hear some testimony from you as to what types of aesthetic impacts you think there might be on the neighboring commercial properties within the zone, or not even within the zone, within the corridor.
Well, again, if I go back to sheet 55, that map, if you look at most of the lots that are along the Route 10 corridor, they're shallow. This one has a nice depth to it, so I think that the site is able to accommodate a higher intensity of use than some of those narrower lots where we certainly would get more of a cluster effect. I like the fact that the applicant is lifting the sign up to elevate it over the building, which I think lessens the impact that it would have on those other residential uses on the corridor, the lower sign packages that are demarcating access points off of the highway. So aesthetically, I don't see interference with clear, safe visibility of either the buildings or the signage themselves along the corridor.
And in your opinion, that it doesn't represent like a sign clutter or some sort of aesthetic adverse or, you know, aesthetic impacts?
I don't think it happens here because of the vertical separation in between. I don't think we have a series of signs all clustering together at this particular location. Again, it's a larger site, so it does have better frontage than many of the other sites along the corridor.
Okay, those are my only questions right now.
Leon?
Did you receive a copy of the November 1st, 2022 report from the zoning officer?
I don't know that I did.
Okay.
Can you read his two or three comments?
He has 3 comments. I'll read the comment number 2, and I'll ask you to respond. A massive billboard will create an unsightly appearance inconsistent with the borough's master plan. So you didn't have a chance to discuss that statement with the zoning officer?
It's the first time I'm hearing it, and my opinion is that's more of a planning comment than a zoning comment. Zoning officer is supposed to abide by the zoning rules, not the master plan.
Right. But the way I read it, clearly he reviewed your application in reference to the master plan, and he found it to be inconsistent with the borough master plan.
Right, it's a comment made by a non-planner who's not qualified to make that statement, in my view.
I wish I had more time. As reviewing and preparing for tonight, I reviewed that memo, and I wish I had a chance to call Mr. Salerno to discuss it further, but I did not.
Any other questions, Lynn?
No.
Mr. Maltz, any questions?
No, none at all.
Questions from board members?
You made a comment, I think you said that you were talking about, kind of the adaptive reuse of the buildings in the area, that this sign would blend, with what's happening there. Could you describe that a little further? I'm not really sure what that means.
Sure, I think that the area has certainly transformed from what it was 10, 15 years ago, when you had dying industrial uses along the corridor. They've been repurposed, they've been redeveloped, which to me is a reflection of the community as progressive, keeping up with the times. This sign would also show the community, in my view, as being progressive, open to business, promoting positive business, and using state-of-the-art technology to do so. So I think that's consistent with and blends with what we've seen here. This is not an area that has stood still. It's an area that has changed, and I think it's changed in a good way. And given the location here and what's around it, I think this will complement that change.
Question for you. You mentioned hardship before on this site. And my understanding is that hardships that are self-created really can't be considered by this board. So can you tell me more about what you meant with what this site presents a hardship?
Sure, that was not for the use variance whatsoever. That was not for the higher Ds, but that was when I worked my way down to C, which was really the setback relief related to the side yard, that we were 54 feet from the side yard as opposed to 75 feet. I did say that the board can move on the C2, which is the balancing, but I also threw out there C1, given the fact that we do have the building there, and we're positioning the sign so that it doesn't interfere with that building. We're working with the land, we're working with the structures that are lawfully existing thereon. So I also put that out there as well as a basis for relief under C1. I clearly think C2 is stronger, and the board well knows they have to move on either C1 or C2. But I think there is an element of C1 here as well. But even if the board dismisses that, I think you've got it under C2.
And attached to this application, as required by the borough's application and its checklist, was a resolution regarding the approval that allowed Harley Davidson to be constructed here. Did you review that as part of your scope?
Along the way I did, yes. I didn't look back at it tonight, but yes.
Okay, so are you able to comment on how the variances on building size, building setback, parking, and significant signage variances may inform this case, this application?
Well, it was a big building to start with. It was adaptive reuse of an existing building. The sign, I think, fit within the context of the larger building. And if I remember right, there was not the sign out front, it was only on the building. I have to go back and look at that, but I don't believe there was an actual roadside sign. It was the building per se. There was the nice awning over the top of the door as well. And yes, I do realize that there was relief granted for extra signage and extra building size here, but I think they were interrelated.
And do you think that those results inform this application at all?
Do I think the findings, the conclusions, or the granting of those variances have bearing on this application? To the extent that the board can certainly consider whether this would constitute over signage or sign clutter here. I think for all of the reasons that have been given, that concern has been addressed both visually and verbally by the applicant.
Last question for me. Are you aware of the two recent zoning ordinance updates adopted in Morris Plains? The overlay on Route 10 and the re-examination of uses here on the corridor, Speedwell corridor?
I'm aware of the overlay down by Weikert, so I'm working on that one. I'm not aware of the other changes in terms of uses along Route 10.
Speedwell.
Oh,
If I said Route 10, I meant Speedwell.
It's actually all commercial zones.
All commercial.
that I am not.
Any other questions from board members?
I have a question.
Lisa?
So looking at these visuals, but thank you very much for the visuals because they're really big help. 9, 10, and 11 show looking west. Are those the houses that are closest to the site, or are there houses beyond, for example, 11?
I can say that, I think you can see this, the street number 9 is house number 17. If I remember right, I can certainly check on Google, but I believe what I did was start with the house that was most remote from Route 10 and then start to work my way back with these signs. But you can see I was sort of taking pictures from across the street.
Because I'm seeing in 11 that there seems to be a house that's quite tall. I'm just wondering what effect they're actually seeing, as Leon's point before, if it's going to affect the people that live on this street, and that house seems quite tall.
There is a house down the street that is actually part of the Ayers Jewelers. I remember the two were hooked together, and I can't remember if that building was used. I thought it was used for storage. So I didn't take pictures of that building. And that may be the one, I honestly can't remember.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Sir, you mentioned you were talking at a pretty good clip there. You mentioned stable, rateable base. Does the sign itself provide a stable, rateable base for the township?
Well,
The borough, excuse me?
it's a commercial use. This is a commercial zone, and it promotes commercial uses. So they're all, in my view, all sort of stitched together. It is serving an economic function.
But the sign itself does not increase or increase taxes, or increase the taxable rate, or taxable base for Morris Plains.
That, I'll let the legal answer to that, but as I understand it from a planning standpoint, yes, it certainly is a taxable use of the site, separate and apart from the, or as an additive to the Harley.
That's correct.
It's considered,
It's not
real
tax
estate under New Jersey law. It's rated as.
Sir, you have to come up forward.
Mr. Kerr, we can handle this. It's not tax exempt, it would be taxed.
Any other questions from board members? Questions from members of the public for this witness?
Yeah.
Again,
Yep.
for the record.
Bill Houston, 80 Glenbrook Road. So, as a planner, it's your job to plan things and make sure that they work out correctly for the surrounding areas and whatnot, right?
Yep.
So, and I believe it's your business is in Morris Plains, or do you actually reside in Morris Plains as well?
No, my office is in Morris Place.
Okay, so, I believe Mr. Hall said earlier that one of the goals of the master plan is to directly benefit Morris Plains. You've said earlier that potentially some of the signage that is up there, some of the rotating signs, would promote commercial businesses. Do we know if any of those are directly related to Morris Plains? Are they in Morris Plains?
It certainly wouldn't foreclose Morris Plains, as you've heard. That could I don't have statistical information, but it certainly does support local businesses as well. It's a way for local businesses on one end of town to get the word out to the motoring public on the major transportation route in your community. It's a potential magnet.
Potential, okay. I guess, without making a statement, as a question, do you believe that this sign would directly benefit the residents of Morris Plains, in your personal or professional opinion?
As I said, it's all about balance.
Mhm.
Certainly this can support local businesses. We see it as we work our way down 10, where doctors have their signs on local doctors have their signs on billboards, and as I said, Denville has announcements about the upcoming holiday events in the downtown. So it's a way to get the word out, above and beyond other forms of media, and it's a good way to get the word out because a lot of people pass by and
Sure.
see it's effective.
Right.
Does it benefit the people of the community itself? I always say this land use benefits people in general, for sure. It benefits all people. It's not exclusionary. It's a way to communicate. The people of Morris Plains who rely on these businesses, either, again, as I said, you work for them, you work with them, or you invest in them. We want to see these businesses succeed, so.
Agreed, but there's no determining factor that says it's strictly gonna be just businesses in Morris Plains that's being shown on that billboard.
No, again, Mr. Gerber said certainly nothing forecloses that. There'd be an opportunity for public service announcements for sure.
Right. So it's possible that the signage that's up there could not be related to Morris Plains businesses at all.
It's just like any store along the corridor is not something that somebody in Morris Plains would want to use. It's any sort of commercial use that doesn't directly benefit a resident of Morris Plains. It's a service use, if you will.
Understood. But all the businesses that are there are, on Morris Plains, within Morris Plains, right? So if somebody goes to a store or something, that benefits Morris Plains financially, right? There is no direct benefit to having a billboard directly to the people of Morris Plains.
Well, again, you've heard that there is certainly a financial benefit or an economic benefit. It is a taxable commercial use on that property.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to add to the record, my client informed me that 80% of advertising is all from local businesses with these billboards. 80% is the average, right? Yeah. And local meaning, in the area.
Any other members of the public have questions for this witness? Seeing none, the witness can step down. Does any member of the public wish to make statements or offer testimony regarding this application?
Yeah.
You're going to be sworn on this one.
I understood.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
Name and address again, please.
Bill Houston, 80 Glenbrook Road, Morris Plains, New Jersey. So I appreciate everybody listening to all this. I appreciate everybody coming forward on this. My personal view is that I don't think that this billboard benefits Morris Plains. I think it's, despite the traffic professional's testimony that it doesn't distract people, I think it does. I think that I've driven 78, 287, a lot of different places that have digital billboards, and you do look at them, right? Regardless of the fact that you might only look at it for 0.3 seconds, it's a concern. Mr. Webster had said that, as a fire chief, right, he has a concern on that corridor as well. There's a high rate of traffic incidents there, and I just don't think it's going to make it any better. Driving down that corridor, also in the morning, especially in the winter, there's a lot of sunlight that comes on people's faces anyway, so it's very difficult to drive there, and then you're adding another distraction. To the point of it benefiting Morris Plains, I don't see the financial benefit to it. It's a message is up there for 8 seconds, right? Of which people may only see it for a couple seconds. And I don't see how that's going to directly benefit Morris Plains in that sense. So I don't know. I just don't think that a 49-foot tall digital billboard belongs in Morris Plains. Just my personal feeling. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
The applicant has an opportunity to make a closing statement.
So, Mr. Chairman, in light of the testimony this evening and what I would call extensive recommendations from some of your consultants to consider a slide at this time, I'm calling it a slide of the board itself, the applicant, I think, is going to consider whether or not that's really viable or appropriate at this time, the slide of the billboard to manage the DOT right-of-way issue down the road. It necessitates further height increases. The board membership said we'd like to see a rendering of it if you're in fact going to do that. We didn't have that, obviously, because this happened on the heels of Thanksgiving. So what we think we're going to do is, you may see nothing further from the applicant, but the applicant wants to at least try to positively react, I think, to some of the commentary and thoughts to see if there is viability there, if it makes sense. And to do that, we need a little more time. So what we look to do is not conclude tonight. You probably will not hear direct testimony from multiple witnesses again. You might hear from one witness down the road. It might be Mr. Gerber. In fact, we'll try to keep it as lean as possible to keep it efficient at the next hearing where we would conclude. But I don't think we're in a position to conclude tonight, given some of the open lingering comments and thoughts that we've got from membership and your staff. So I'll defer a closing statement at this time, and we'd be looking for another date of the board. We would not need much time. I can tell you that I heard December 18th. I know I'm not available on that night. I can try to get you coverage if you want, or we take the next date. So we would look for the next date after that, Karen, after 12/18.
So reorg meeting in January. Fourth Monday in January.
And I suspect, Mr. Chairman, members will be talking about, if any more continued testimony, a matter of minutes on direct.
All right, January 22nd.
Okay, it's January 22nd.
All right, Mr. Kelly, you'll consent to an extension of time for the board to act through, maybe something, through the end of February?
Yes.
So the motion would be to carry this to January 22, 2024, 7:30 p.m. With no further notice.
Is there a motion to that effect from a board member, please?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Doug McCabe. Mike Botch. Looking right at him. Mike Bozak, right. You made it 19 years, thanks. All right, Karen, roll call, please, on the seconded motion.
Mr. Baza?
Yes.
Mrs. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Ethan?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. Webster?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes. The matter is carried until the January reorganization meeting. No need for additional notice.
Thank you, folks. Until then, very happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you. All right, we do have a bit of board business. We're gonna go quick. Is there any new business? Is there any old business? All right, we do have to go into executive session. I have to read a resolution, and that time the room should be empty. There will be no business after executive session. We can simultaneously adjourn executive session in the regular meeting.
Karen,
Karen, are we good?
you can have it.
All right. Board of Adjustment Resolution 2310, authorizing closed session pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Laws. Be it resolved by Morris Plains Board of Adjustment, County of Morris, and State of New Jersey, on 27th day of November 2023 as follows. Morris Plains Board of Adjustment shall adjourn to executive session in accordance with NJSA 10:412B7, being the Open Public Meeting Law, in order to discuss personnel. It is not known at the present time when the matter under discussion will be disclosed. Morris Plains Board of Adjustment shall convene following the executive session. The resolution shall take effect as provided.